Thank you, everyone. Welcome to our 8th commencement ceremony, our 8th commencement lecture. I now call upon the stage. Of course, we will come to the person of the moment, but first we will begin with our Dean, Professor Kishle Bhattacharjee.
This is the first commencement lecture in the last 8 years where I didn't have to wake you guys up to come to the hall. Batch of 2024 and the returning JC students, welcome to the new academic year. In 2 days, we will have our 5th batch of students graduate. And to use a cliche, every year at this time, the old order changeth, yielding place to the new. I'm aware that I must quickly perform my role because you're waiting for him, but allow me a few minutes. Across the world, we have been witnessing successive summers of discontent, and it has been season upon season of occupation and resistance. But in the face of severe odds, democracy is fighting back. In recent months, in our own country, there has been a sort of reclaiming of our constitution and its democratic principles we adopted 75 years ago. And our Vice-Chancellor will reveal to you later how JGU will be writing that history. But how did democracy take root in human society? Let me tell you a story. If you walk up a 150-meter rugged hill in Athens, not larger than 7 acres of land, and remember that JGU is 100 acres, it is bewildering how the small piece of fortified highland influenced the entire Western civilization and global thought over 25 centuries. How? As thought and art flourished, an exceptional group of artists put into effect the ambitious plans of Athenian statesman Pericles, and under the inspired guidance of the sculptor Phidias, transformed the rocky hill into a unique monument of thought and arts. On this hill was born democracy, philosophy, theater, freedom of expression and speech, and that provide to this day the intellectual and spiritual foundation for the contemporary world and its values. Below the Acropolis is the amphitheater of Dionysus, where it is believed democracy first found its voice through the plays of Sophocles, Aeschylus, and Euripides. The people of ancient Athens really understood the importance of theater as a shaper of the mind and soul. Comedies were of high importance because they criticized high-standing people in Athens, which really took democracy a step forward. This kind of criticism was not only allowed, it was expected. Playwrights like Aristophanes were there to make fun of the rulers, but also to make our hearts bleed about the tragedy of humankind. They were criticizing people and shaping human thought at the same time. That is democracy at work. On the other side of the hill was the Agora. That is where Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, and several others discussed and debated. They were free citizens who built a society of free thinkers. During the nationalist phase of Indian theatre, drama was at first a direct critique of the colonial politics. Plays such as Neel Darpan used stark realism to unmask the oppression of peasants, estate workers, and poor. And post-independence period, Indian theatre continued to perform the function of critique. In the great Natya Shastra, it is Brahma who creates theatre as the 5th Veda, open to all varnas. He attributes the highest value to it as the path of human beings to transcend the vicissitudes of life. Freedom for all, freedom for thought is my first article of faith, and I welcome you again to this agora to question, debate, discuss, and hold power to account. Given who we have delivering the commencement speech, one of our finest film directors, I think it is only fitting to note the role of performance and storytelling for a healthy democracy. I would now like to invite our founding Vice-Chancellor, Professor Raj Kumar, to address you. And let me tell you that he's a die-hard movie buff. And I must also acknowledge his unstinted support in helping us build this school with a state-of-art facilities, the latest of which shall be launched today. A film studio promises to be our most exciting space to tell stories. And it's also been a good summer. Just as we completed the film studio, we were allotted a frequency by the Government of India, and we shall soon have a community radio station on campus. Thank you.
All right, very, very good morning to all of you. First of all, I would like to extend my heartiest congratulations and greetings to all the incoming students of the 2024 batch of the Jindal School of Journalism and Communication. I want to begin by saying that what a defining moment for you in your own lives, having completed your 12th standard as well as completed the examinations, and then you, of course, went through a process of entrance examinations and all the career choices that you had to make before you ultimately decided to come here. So it's a very special moment and a very special journey, but I can't help but noting that journey because I was so pleased to see that Mr. Imtiaz Ali is a graduate of literature from the University of Delhi, which is also my alma mater. The reason that is important to mention here is that many years ago, I decided to study law, and I come from a place called Chennai, and it's a relatively conservative city. And so when it was public knowledge that I'm planning to become a lawyer, over 20 of my relatives turned up at my home completely unannounced, and I'm almost closeted with my parents. My mother is a doctor, and so the first question my uncle asked my father was, and it became public knowledge that I want to become a lawyer. He said, "What happened to Raj? He was a good student." And then my other aunt said, I knew he was not good enough to become a doctor, but I thought he will at least become an engineer. And then the third person, another aunt said, doctors and engineers, you need to be smart, intelligent, and hardworking. He was never cut out for it. But we were hoping at least he'll become a chartered accountant. And of course, after some time, the conversation ended up saying that, these are very difficult times for you as parents. We are with you, and these bad times will not last long. Now, I'm thinking about that because you have chosen to study journalism and film and media. And I shudder to think that what would have happened, because those things were not even conceived at that time. So in a way, congratulations to each one of you, because you have taken a path that is far less traveled, and the fact that you have chosen to pursue these disciplines in this university, which focuses a lot more on liberal arts, humanities, and social sciences, speaks volumes about your own courage of conviction, but also the fact that India has changed. I see ourselves as Three Idiots generation. How many of you have watched the movie Three Idiots? Good, because I was telling Kishore that should be the eligibility criteria for selecting students. If you haven't watched it, I would be worried about it. Today is a special day, and I'm not going to speak much because my own hero and I'm a big fan of him for a number of reasons, but most importantly, he's beyond a filmmaker. What Imtiaz Ali has done in his extraordinary career is to challenge every stereotype and to create a new imagination. He's one of those rare filmmakers who not only entertains the audience, but also leaves us with so many thoughts and so many questions and challenges our perspectives. In fact, it's very rare that art in all its forms and manifestations can be so compellingly inspiring and informative and empowering, and all those things he does in his films. But most importantly, he also deeply embeds himself into creating characters that can define the future of society and shape perspectives that we all end up having. So we are very, very fortunate that we have with us an outstanding intellectual. I would consider him as a true public intellectual because he uses the most popular medium to be able to share some of the most important perspectives, So I want to say that I know you must have watched all his movies, and I have done as well. But a very interesting movie, which I would encourage you to watch, don't go by the title of the movie. It's called Thai Massage. When you get time, you should watch it, because it picks up one of the very, very interesting themes that continuously impacts our society. And that's the kind of difficult subjects he ends up picking. Every movie that he has done is also essentially advancing that thought. Lastly, I want to say, for all the students who have joined the Jindal School of Journalism and Communication, you are part of a larger community. always remember that this university has a wider community. You have 11 other schools in various disciplines, including law, business, international affairs, public policy, liberal arts and humanities, architecture, banking and finance, environment and sustainability, psychology and counseling, languages and literature, where we have a BA in English literature, and of course, public health and human development. So the point I want to say is that being a journalist and being somebody interested in film and media, you inevitably have a responsibility to understand the society at large. You ought to be coming out of your comfort zone to be able to understand the complexities of the society that we live in and the kind of challenges that we have. Professor Kishalai Bhattacharya, your dean, so beautifully talked about the evolution of democracy. But we are also part of a larger effort to speak truth to power at a time when we are constantly challenged with regard to the independence of our institutions, the kind of role media can play towards seeking accountability and promoting greater transparency. You as thinking people, you as people who are going to be future journalists, media professionals, communication specialists, and of course filmmakers and actors and all of that, you have a bigger role to play in shaping the future of our society. As we look at that future, I'm delighted to share with you that we are indeed celebrating the 15th anniversary of our university. I want to pay tribute to our Chancellor and benefactor, Mr. Jindal, who not only established the university, contributing over 2,600 crores of rupees towards the establishment of the university and its evolution, but also ensured that academic freedom and autonomy and independence remains the most important part of our journey. As we celebrate the 15th anniversary this year, I also want to share with you that India is celebrating the 75th anniversary of the adoption of the Constitution of India. On 26 November 1949, the Constitution of India was signed and it essentially was adopted by the Constituent Assembly. Now, of course, 75 years is a very big journey, but quite remarkably, we don't have in India a museum dedicated to the ideas and ideals of the Constitution, the history and evolution of the Constitution, and the celebration of the makers of the Constitution, and the evolution of the rights and freedoms in the last 75 years. Quite remarkably, having been to the Supreme Court of India, the Parliament, the Rashtrapati Bhavan, and also other high courts, to my personal surprise, we discovered that we don't have an institution of that kind. And quite remarkably, the United States, which is also one of the older democracies, has an institution called the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, right near the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. Having been to that institution, we embarked on a journey at O.P. Jindal Global University to establish India's first Constitution Museum. As we speak, efforts are on to build this museum. And I want to share this with you because today, more than ever, we are also critically involved and embedded ourselves to the ideals of Constitution. When I was young and went to school, we had a subject called civics. The ideas of Constitution and civic education was promoted and was part of that education then. Unfortunately, in recent times, such a subject is not taught in our schools. So a generation of young people, and probably many of you, have grown up with little understanding of the Constitution. And one of the efforts is to take the Constitution out of the imagination of lawyers and judges and to involve historians, political scientists, sociologists, anthropologists, philosophers, and of course, media professionals, people who engage in literature to be able to connect with the Constitution. This museum will be located here, and we are indeed expecting the inauguration of the Constitution Academy and the Rights and Freedoms Museum on 26 November of this year. I know that you will be part of the effort to make history. In any case, on a lighter note, I will say that as it is, a lot of people are carrying the copy of the Constitution these days and walking around. It is only appropriate that a university which is deeply embedded in the values of Constitution and the fact that a lot of young people are here makes it even more important for us to be wedded to it. In closing, I want to say that as a young person today, you have a very big responsibility. We are a country of 1.5 billion people. That makes us the world's largest population. But what many people don't know, at least outside India, is that 1 billion of that 1.5 are people who are less than 35 years of age. At the dawn of Indian independence in 1947, our life expectancy was 32, and today it is 72. United Nations estimated that in the next decades, we will end up having a life expectancy of over 80. That essentially means that when most parts of the Western world will become older, when most parts of Eastern world, including China and Japan, will become older, India will be younger and will be younger for a longer time. Young Indians like you, the students of the Jindal School of Journalism and Communication, will be shaping the future of India and the future of the world. And you will be able to do that only if you are able to get the kind of education that can not only be informative, but also engaging, inspiring, and truly transformative. Our speaker today, who has agreed to deliver the commencement lecture, is one such person who has spent his educational and professional life to advance those ideas through a most powerful medium, the films. I have great pleasure in once again thanking Imtiaz Ali for accepting our invitation. I also want to thank Amreen and also Kishalai for making all of this happen. I'm also so happy to see that all of you are here without a lot of nudging to be present here. I think it's important we get Imtiaz often so that we can see the faces of our students in these areas other than their own respective rooms. Thank you very much.
थैंक यू प्रोफेसर राज. कहते हैं कहीं पहुंचने के लिए कहीं से निकलना जरूरी होता है. This profound line speaks to the journey of self-discovery and adventure, much like the cinematic journeys Mr. Imtiaz Ali takes us on through his films. A very good morning to one and all present here. It is with immense pleasure that I, Moksh Than, President of the JSJC Student Council, stand before you today as we have the honor of hosting someone who has redefined storytelling in the Indian cinema, whose movies resonate deeply with our hearts and soul, the one and only Mr. Imtiaz Ali. From the soulful streets of Delhi in Rockstar to the enchanting lanes of Corsica in Tamasha, Mr. Ali's films have taught us to embrace the beauty of moments in our lives. Your work in Jab Bhi Met Sir reminded us that main apni favorite hu, and that self-love and confidence are the keys to conquering any obstacle. The character's quest for freedom and self-discovery in the movie Highway taught us that zindagi kaise jeeni hai, ye hum decide karte hai. Your films are not just stories, they are experiences that leave an everlasting mark on our hearts. Today, as we eagerly await your words of wisdom, we are reminded of a dialogue from Tamasha. ये कहानी तो सबको पता है, पर ये कहानी कैसी है, ये सिर्फ सुनाने वाला ही बता सकता है. On that note, I now invite the storyteller himself, the man of the hour, Mr. Imtiaz Ali, to take the stage. Thank you.
I must congratulate you, Mr. Vice Chancellor, for all these bright faces that I see. I must congratulate you for the brightness of the faces that I have seen today morning. This is not an easy achievement in a college, university atmosphere. And there's a lot that has gone into it. And, but this is the tip of the iceberg that we see and we can enjoy. I stand over here, it feels as though in a garden full of very bright flowers. And I'm very happy to be here. And I thank Amreen and all the powers that be that brought me here. And I'm immensely reminded of the time when I was sitting in those chairs, looking at things like commencement lectures, looking up at people on the stage, because my stage in Hindu college was up, and, listening to commencement lectures. And in all the years that separate me from you, I have learned that now I'm on the stage to not look down upon its audience. And there are many other things that I've also learned, I think, in the journey in between. And the most important thing is that you can only take with a pinch of salt the experiences of other people. If by chance I happen to share some of my experiences today, it is not meant for you to follow them. At best, these are just musings of a person who's sharing his experiences for you to just, just look at them and see if there's anything that strikes you or, strikes a chord in you. So today is about stories, I think, because I just read that the commencement ceremony, that stories matter. Why stories matter? Why stories matter? So what I have told you before this, in a sense, is the fact that don't only follow the stories of other people, create your own myth, create your own stories. We will come back to this point. But before that, we were talking in the car, and there is a quote by Plato, who was mentioned earlier by Professor Kisley. And I must congratulate you for all the information that you just so quickly doled out. You guys should search for it. So Plato said, those who tell stories rule society. We will come back to this one also. But just thinking about stories, there is this, so, you can look at stories and the fact that it is believed that Homo sapiens came to rule the world because of stories. There were other animals, there were other human races, species, that were more powerful than Homo sapiens. But Homo sapiens could organize themselves into concepts that came from stories. So, simple thing that was written in this wonderful book called Sapiens, that some of you might have read, and I suggest everyone should read, is that a monkey can indicate that there's a lion that might attack, so we are in danger. It might also indicate that there is an eagle that might attack. And these two sounds are different. So obviously, there is language in the monkey world. Perhaps an antelope can also communicate that there is a lion, so run immediately, or that the lion is at a little distance, so you've got to, there is some time for you to run. But, and then there were other species of humans that could perhaps do a bit more. And they could organize themselves to certain concepts. But the sapient species was to say that there is a god lion that is actually the father of our race or something like that, and create a myth. It was the humans, it was the sapient species that could say there is a god. We must worship it. Or that there is a fairy or an elf or a dwarf or a giant or a demon. And basically, they could tell stories and imagine things that do not exist. And therefore, they came to believe in concepts like corporates, things that you can't see, love, things again that you can't see. And perhaps the Homo sapiens species is the only one that actually tells stories. And it is actually quite debated and perhaps generally understood that it is stories that made us the most powerful species on earth. God knows for how long and God knows how we've used it. But coming back to this whole thing, there are a few things that I wanted to share apart from movies, apart from media, which is expected, and we'll talk about all of that as well. But the fact is that if we go back to Plato, because he said a very, very important thing, that those who tell stories rule society. The other way of looking at it is, who are the people that rule society? And what is the story they are telling us? And how is it so influential in our lives? Okay, so what are the powers that be? I feel one of them may be money, like market, business, the might of money. And so there was this very interesting thing that came out in the beginning of COVID, that all the international markets, the entire market has crashed because people are buying only what they need. What does that mean? It means that the market, to do better, needs us to buy things that we don't need, to form habits that are not necessary. And therefore, there will be more expenditure that we have to meet. So that is the way that the market works today. And you can say that it's all right because money goes from one pocket into another pocket. But what also market does is that the way that it is going on is that it takes the money from the pockets of many people and puts it into the pockets of very few people. So this is what creates this kind of a power. And what is the story that we've been told, therefore, to make this happen and make this prominent? What I'm trying to say over here is that as students, and especially as people of the media, it is not enough for us to listen to other people's stories. It is very important for us to also see what our stories are within the narrative, how we can pierce the narrative. I think media should be about piercing the narrative and seeing the inside truth, to form, therefore, your own story that you've got to say. Because the purpose of education, I believe, is not to obey. The purpose of education is to open your eyes and see and question. And one of the things that I would like to also share is that if you follow every command that is given to you, if you follow every instruction that is given to you, you are setting yourself up for failure. There is a lot of merit in actually challenging the tenets that are thrown to you. It is more favorable and perhaps more profitable for people to challenge authority than just to follow, because the whole world will come to you and try to make you faceless, nameless objects that can fit into a system. There is always going to be pressure on people to lose their individuality, because the smoothest commodity that one can get for market is a faceless person, is a faceless consumer. We've stopped calling people, we call them consumer. We've stopped calling stories, we've started to call them content. These are faceless things. These have no individuality. And you or me or anybody has no power unless you have your individuality. So when the world goes crushing it, you must protect it, because that is the only profitable thing to do in this world. That is the only merit that anybody might have. And this is the place for you to be, to pick more of yourself. I see before me a very bright place. I can't put it in objective reasoning, but I feel that this might be the place created so meticulously by the founders of this institution, where you can actually be more of yourself. So use this opportunity very well. Do all that you can. You will find various disciplines. And as you were saying, sir, that the system of education was different the time I was studying. It's different now. It was very different when Plato was climbing the hill with Sophocles, etc. Over that time, everything was the same thing. Politics was also theater, was also science, was also astronomy, was also philosophy. And just a remarkable statistic about Athens, he was talking about Athens at that time, the population of static Athens was not more than 10,000. Out of 10,000 people, we over here in this hall have taken the name of like 7 or 8. So can you imagine that happening? And we are talking about what, 300 BC? Maybe 400 years before Christ. So 2024 years, and then, 300 years or 400 years before that, we still know the name of Sophocles, Euripides, Plato, and Archimedes, and Aristotle, all these guys, Socrates. So that was because of education. That is because they decided to educate themselves. And I feel that I can see this bright change in the nation as well, sir. That education is being given finally the seriousness that it was perhaps not given in our times. Some of us had to choose to be educated. You guys don't have that choice in a way that is good, but you have to go beyond. We are an overpopulated nation, the most populated nation on earth. You will never do well if you don't go beyond the course. And the way to go beyond, I feel, is to find yourself, find what your own story is. So I can see your faces and I realize that शायद फंडे बहुत ज़्यादा हो गए. But I get this opportunity because I'm perhaps the oldest person in the room right now. And we are very soon also going to talk about your questions, and I think Amreen is going to be in conversation with me, and we can have more about my story. Because for me, my story matters. For me, stories is that thing in my life which gives me comfort when there is nobody else. And just to put it slightly, just as a means to entertain myself, pass my time, I used to imagine beyond what I saw. If I saw, let's say, a girl in a train, I would think what would happen if she missed the train, and what would happen if I happen to also miss it, and then how will we get into the train, and then as we are doing so, what might happen between us, and who is this person who is standing on that window, and after I leave, what would happen in the life of that person. These were just means of self-entertainment. And then it has, I consider myself the luckiest person on earth, because to do this, people used to say in my time that, why are you wasting your time? You're daydreaming, you're doing theater, you're writing. What a waste of time. Why don't you get into class and study mathematics? You guys are actually here to study it. How lucky are you? But you are still having to give some money. I am actually being paid to do this. How lucky am I? I think all of us have to do that little bit extra service to society, because all of us are lucky being here in media, in filmmaking, in journalism. And what else? Corporate communication, as long as there's communication. So I thank you very much for being here. And I'm feeling very happy, being a film industry person, to see a house full. And I hope to meet many of you over and over again. And all the best, and do very well in your lives. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I must tell you for a fact, and I'm sure the Vice Chancellor would also agree, for us, this is like not a school commencement lecture, but a university-wide commencement lecture, because we could find so many of our students from other schools attending this lecture. But on a very different note, I must thank Mr. Imtiaz Ali for sharing his life experiences, because so many things that you had mentioned, it has a lot to do even with our pedagogical experiences within the classroom, and that's a message that I would like to share with all our newly admitted students joining various programs of the School of Journalism and Communication. The topic you chose, why stories matter, they're indeed so very important when we wanted to articulate and deconstruct and share our own ideas about a particular discipline. Because when you are storytelling, you are emotive, you are participating in that particular exercise, you are immersive, you are yourself, you are original. And that's the kind of a pedagogical experience that you can have as part of the school and the university, and all our returning students and existing students from the School of Journalism and from even other schools would agree. So here you have an opportunity to carve your own story, your own understanding of the discipline, and thus prosper, while again taking a key word from Imtiaz about respect, the way you're going to treat yourself. You would expect others to treat yourself. You would treat even others in a similar way and have that much needed respect for diversity, for heterogeneity, for the university regulations. And it's going to be a fun time here, both academically and even all matters pertaining to the curriculum, because the individual becomes important as it's a learner-centric environment, which many of us during our days did not get. And on this particular note, even I must express my gratitude to the Vice Chancellor to have raised some questions and shared some reflections. And those were the reflections of our days and times in the early 90s and late 90s. So that's indeed very nostalgic, and also puts us on a path to realize that we are on a path of hope and not despair, and triumph and not trivials. So on this particular note, I congratulate all the newly admitted students, and I would like to once again, iterate the support of the school faculty and the staff members and the support of the entire university to ensure that you have quite an enriching and engaging experience. And I'm also grateful to the speaker for having spent a considerable time here with us, and we look forward to having you more with us, Imtiaz, in days to come. Thank you so much.